Welcome to the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast. My name is Katie Dodd, and I am a nutrition entrepreneur. But here's the catch. I have a full-time traditional dietitian job. My entrepreneurial endeavors are my side hustle. I've been making six figures through my job and side hustle doing things that I love. If I can do it, you can too. This podcast is for dietitians, interns, and students who want to be inspired to start or perfect the side hustle of their dreams. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to the 60th episode of the Dietitian Side Hustle podcast, Starting a Private Practice. Today, I will be interviewing Adrien Paczosa. Adrien is a business strategist and coach for private practice owners and dietitians. She helps them grow and scale their practices to 6 and 7 figures. She's the founder of Fearless Practitioners, which includes business training and coaching, plus an awesome podcast. She is also the owner of I Live Well Nutrition, a group practice specializing in eating disorders in Austin, Texas. Welcome, Adrien. Would you like to share a few words before we get started?
Well, first off, huge congratulations for your 60th episode. That's awesome.
Thank you.
But no, I think I am just so excited to be here, and let's talk about the side hustle.
Yes, let's do it. So can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into private practice and the business coaching space?
Yeah. So the group practice is 15 years old, which is crazy to think about it. And it started just as a side hustle, honestly. I was working at a hospital and at an eating disorder treatment center. And part of kind of the discharge process for eating disorders is they have to have a dietitian. And so there isn't a lot of dietitians in our area at the time that worked with eating disorders. So I had a private practice with patients flying in. And because one of my core values is to accept health insurance, I figured it out with a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. We also started to get a lot of other patients, and out of the blue, this is before there was dietitians at grocery stores, we had a local grocery store reach out and say, oh, we have a whole bunch of we're doing a new program for diabetes. And part of our program, the people that are in it need to see a dietitian 3 times in 3 months. Could you take on some patients? I was like, oh, sure, that's fine. They're like, wonderful. We'll be sending you 60 patients a month. I was like, oh, snap. Okay. So I just said, okay. And I was like, I will figure it out. And so that's when I started to hire on other dietitians to help out with this wonderful influx. And since then there's been ebbs and flows and twists and turns. And I think as of today, we've got about 17 providers. We're adding on therapists, and we're hoping to eventually become one of the largest private practices in the state of Texas.
That's amazing. Congratulations. And I love that your practice started as a side hustle. And I think that's going to be inspirational for a lot of our listeners, because I think some people think, man, if I have a full-time job, there's no way I can, become an entrepreneur. And obviously you've shown it's possible. So I'm so excited for chatting.
Yes.
So many dietitians are interested in starting a private practice as a side hustle. So if someone is brand new to private practice, where should they even start?
I have so many ideas on this one. I would say a couple of different places, because we want to get all the legal stuff done. And I think to dietitians, that is the scary part. But honestly, once you do it, you never have to ever do it again. Hopefully, if you do it right. Yeah. So tackle that, get that out of the way. But honestly, do not waste your time and or money on a fancy website, social media, all that other stuff. Spend time on a blog, because those are magical. But honestly, getting to know who's going to send you patients. So I think that's what really has helped me and all the people I do business coaching with, is know who's going to be a referral partner. Referral partner? I don't know how to say that one. So that's, I would say, get to know your community.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, because I think sometimes as dietitians, we can get caught up in that I'm going to make a pretty logo or a wonderful landing page website. But I think you're right. That's the first thing, is they actually have to find patients, because without patients, they have no business. So.
Exactly. And all that stuff costs money. And I don't know about you, Katie, but when I first started, I was like, I got 2 pennies to rub together. So I'm doing this on the cheap. Yep. And so to me, I was like, I don't have the money in the bank account to spend on a website, to spend on all of this. And so I never wanted to take out a loan or put things on credit cards. And so I made sure that any money that was coming in, I could afford everything that I was paying for with the practice, which in the long run, holy bananas, y'all, it makes a huge difference in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, get those patients. Once you have money, then you can afford to pay for that fancy stuff.
Yes.
So awesome. And I'm actually curious, you mentioned the legal stuff. So I'm assuming you mean like having your insurance. Can you maybe clarify that for people who are like, oh, legal?
Yeah. So I think first figure out what kind of practice you want. You can either be a sole proprietor or an LLC. Each state has a very different rules and regulations on what is required. So I don't want to tell you which one's better, worse, all of that. That's where I would say you will have to spend some of your own money and hire a CPA and or a small business attorney, or go to the Small Business Association. They have a free mentorship program. It's called the SCORE Mentorship Program.
Ooh.
You can have a free business coach that will help you with all of this. So it's wonderful. So I think that's one of the resources nobody talks about, especially a business coach. I'm like, hey, don't come hire me, go get this free stuff. But I think for like the beginning stuff, like don't spend money on it. Find some great resources. So that's where I would say is get the legal stuff. You want to make sure that you have your your malpractice insurance all set up. If you are going to be taking insurance and accepting insurance, which I really do think is a wonderful place to be as a registered dietitian, start that whole credentialing process. And it really isn't hard. If you can do the Krebs cycle, you can accept insurance.
That's a good point. and I love that resource with the SBA. I've been to their website and I've utilized resources, but I'd never even saw that SCORE program. Like, it's very interesting.
It is a whole bunch of past entrepreneurs that are retired that are just there to mentor. And I was shocked. Like they were like, "Oh, sure, let's Zoom. Because I needed some help with QuickBooks and accounting. And they're like, "Let's do it." I was like, "And how much do I owe you?" And they're like, "No, this is free." I was like, "Okay."
That's amazing. That's so cool. So my next question for you is, how much time does it take to build a private practice?
Oh, I think that's a hard one because it depends on what type of practice you want. Do you want this to be your full-time gig? Do you want it to be your side hustle? There is no wrong answer. So I think it depends. For me, and I guess I'll just share my experience, I eventually wanted it to be my full-time. And so I had my full-time jobs. And then I worked really hard until that side hustle was paying equally as my full-time job. And then when it finally surpassed that income, that's when I let go of that. So that honestly took me about, I'd say 2 years. Because I wanted to put in and make sure I had enough money. I also really encourage everybody that is doing private practice to have 6 months of your personal and professional expenses saved up. Because if anything happens to you that you're not able to work, you at least have the ability to survive for 6 months. And so when I started my private practice, it was just me, was not married, had no other little humans to take care of. And so my expenses weren't too crazy. It was just like rent and stuff. So that was something my mentors had always told me is have your 6 months of personal and 6 months of your business expenses always in savings, because just in case.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good point, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're doing it on your own. You don't have a full-time job to rely back on in the programs they might have. So that is an excellent point, and also a good strategy for those trying to figure out their exit plan.
Yep. That was also really helpful. It's like, oh, okay, once I hit this financial marker, I'm good to go.
Yep. Awesome. So is it hard to keep costs down and build up revenues in a private practice?
No, not at all. It's hard if you like to buy things, but I think it's one of those, you don't need a lot to be a dietitian.
Yep.
Like we don't need equipment. So depending if you're going to be virtual or in person, like you need a good computer, you need some charting software, you need a phone, you need internet, and you're pretty good to go.
Yep. Awesome. And with your practice, do you do in-person, virtual, or both?
We do both.
Awesome.
We were mainly in person until COVID hit.
Yeah.
And now we're doing, I would still say 75% of our patients still love virtual, which is wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, looking at some of the good things that have come from COVID, I think just some of the access and the ability to, have the virtual care, especially like for people who work full time or they have kids and they just can't, actually
Mhm.
commute. So yeah, there's a lot of good things that have come out of everything. So,
Exactly.
uh, so tell me, what is the most rewarding part about being a private practice dietitian?
There's a lot. The things that kind of pop to my head is you don't get bored, or you shouldn't get bored, in the sense that you can do anything. And so if you love patient work, rock star, rock it out. And if you get burnt out seeing patients, cool beans. There's other ways to make money from
Yeah.
working with brands, doing blogs, doing media work, consulting with different treatment centers, facilities. Um, there's so many other options, so that I think that's one of the things that I really love is like, I really love patients, but after a while, it's a lot of like mental work. And so then I can shift my brain and find other ways to make money. And so I think that was something really fun for me.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And that's one of the things I love about being a dietitian and all these opportunities that I didn't realize even just a couple years ago were available for us. It's like, yes, you can combine multiple side hustles or multiple things. So you can see your patients, you can have a blog, you can sell digital goods, courses, like there's all these cool things that we could do, work with brands. And it's pretty phenomenal what we can do as dietitians. And I really think, there's just so much opportunity and a lot of untapped resources that we're still digging into.
Oh, totally. I think, and I think it's such a neat time to be a dietitian
Yeah.
because more and more patients or clients, whatever you want to call them, are like, this like health thing is important. And so I think there's going to be a huge influx of people wanting to see registered dietitians.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And especially as we have more of this telehealth virtual dietitian. So yeah, for sure.
Yay.
Yeah. So we know that dietitian side hustlers have less time typically, and you know that because you used to be one. So thinking of like an action item for a dietitian listening to this, and they're just like so inspired, like, yes, I am ready. The time is now. I'm going to start pursuing private practice. What action item would you have for these dietitians who are
Mm.
listening and want to start that private practice side hustle?
I would say do your math and do your homework. So
Mm,
first, figure out how much money you need for your 6 month safety blanket in your personal and professional. And then I would calculate out how many patients you need to be seeing every single week and month to hit your target income. So if you need to be making $60,000, $70,000 a year and you charge $100 per session, figure out how many patients that is per month. And so then you know how much you actually need to be seeing in order to make your income. So I think that's something that helped me a lot of like, oh crap, it's the 15th of the month and I've seen like 4 patients. I need to hustle. So it gives you that kind of idea and strategy. So you're not always feeling kind of wobbly or safe. So that was one of the things I also wanted. I always wanted to feel safe and secure in my business. And
mhm.
so having those boundaries allowed that.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. And I know my business coach always says, do the math and work backwards. So figure out, like you
Yes.
said, what you need, and then there you go. You got a game plan. So what's some of the homework you'd recommend that they do that they kind of pursue outside of
Yeah.
figuring out that math?
So once you have that, start. So I think that's one of the big things, and start saving. So every time
Mhm.
that you're in your business, see how you could just reinvest that money into your business, and
Yep.
same in your current job. If you can find a way to live off a little bit less of your paycheck and put some into savings, that would be my action item for you guys to
Yeah.
really start.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and chatting with me today. Where can people find you online?
Oh, of course. This is fun. So y'all can head on over to the social channels. It's Adrien Paczosa, Paczosa. It's crazy. And then over on fearlesspractitioners.com, that's where you can find all the tips and tools on business coaching. And if you want to see what our group practice is like, it's just ilivewellnutrition.com.
Awesome. And I'm going to have the links to your website and social in the show notes. So that way people can check out more about what you do. So thank you so much for being on, Adrien.
Oh, thank you. And happy 60th show.
Thanks. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast, guys. Be sure to head on over to the Dietitian Side Hustle website at dietitiansidehustle.com and check out our coaching page to learn about all the ways that we can work together. Have an amazing day, and I'm so proud of you for taking the initiative to listen to this podcast. Now go out there and get it done. Bye, guys.